Hello and welcome to a special edition of Inside Africa. I'm Aisha Sase. On the programme this week, we take you to Cape Town, where South Africa's new president has just hosted the 19th World Economic Forum on Africa. Over the next half hour, a panel of African leaders will discuss the challenges they face in the midst of the global economic crisis and the actions they're taking. Without further ado, here's our Robin Kerno to get the discussion rolling.
Okay, I think we're ready to start. Just want to welcome Your Excellencies, President Kagame of Rwanda and President Zuma of South Africa. Okay, so let's talk about the challenges you two face in the 21st century in the current global environment. What for you is the overriding challenge, worry, concern that you think are going to define at least the next year, or your presidency perhaps?
For me, it concerns me a lot when I see Africa, and by that there is a fair share for Rwanda in terms of these challenges. Always involved in the debates, there are debates that go on about how Africa is marginalized. But I tend not to emphasize that. Maybe we need to look at how we marginalize ourselves too. So what can we do to make sure that this does not keep us in this position where we feel globally we are not properly integrated? We are not players. For example, the current global economic crisis. People say, yeah, this is a crisis we did not create in the first place, meaning Africa. But that does not tell the exact story. The exact story is actually not being part of the cause of the problem worries me also. Yes, because it actually says you are not a player. For example, again, people talked about the G20. And of course, Africa had some presence. One, of course, in the form of South Africa, which was there in its own right. Then you had one of the leaders on our continent, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, who also ably represented Africa. But represented Africa how? He wasn't providing, meaning Africa was not through him at the high table, because this is the high table of G20. Really, they could have invited Africa or not. But the G20 members were invited in their own right. So when can Africa have its own right to be at the high table rather than being invited from that position of weakness with a ball in the hand instead of being part of the problem, which means they are part of the global relevance, and also being part of the solution?
There is very little that is said how you are correcting the source of the problem and what people are doing so that it does not occur again. But if you talk about the solutions, given the fact that they are first world and second world countries, what are these solutions? Are these solutions designed to deal with those? Because in a sense, the impact of the crisis is felt more heavily in poor countries. But they are not the source of the problem. What is it that we are doing? So I'm saying the leadership of today has more responsibilities to be able to articulate their challenges, to convince everybody, so that we begin to look at things differently and look at things in terms of how we relate to one another as countries, to appreciate that if we say the world is globalized and the problems therefore are bound to be globalized, The solutions, therefore, must also globalize.
While African governments contend with the global economic crisis, the continent must also confront a number of homegrown problems that threaten stability and hinder prosperity. What must Africa do to help itself? Robin Kerner will ask our panel.